Hello and welcome to another episode of the MXGP Podcast Show on Vital MX. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, here with a small message before this podcast begins. We had a bit of an issue with the first 3 minutes of video, and so when this podcast starts, we will jump to 3 or 4 minutes in. Fortunately, you didn't miss any of the insight or humour, just some of the intro patter. So rest assured, you won't miss out on any MXGP of China information. Apologies once again. Thank you to Polosport, All Balls Racing, and EVS. On with the podcast. Yeah, funnily enough, so it turns out that Jeffrey didn't tell anyone about his broken ribs until he decided to talk about it publicly. The team were unaware, and typical Jeffrey behavior, smoke and mirrors, a lot of mysterious stuff going on. I don't know if it's the same ribs that he injured in Sardinia. I'm trying to figure that out. And funnily enough, so are KTM. We're all in this together trying to determine more information. And then, the burn on his arm is quite nasty as well. China was another... It's funny, Turkey was a massive shift. And then China was an even more significant shift. I presumed we were at the point in the season when nothing was going to go wrong for anyone, and we were just going to kind of bring this thing to a close with some sort of consistency. But yeah, my overarching takeaway from China is the fact that I guess it is true, and it is impossible for a rider to go through a season without having some sort of mishap or bad luck or disaster, which I honestly thought that Tim Geiser was just going to go through the season without an issue, but I guess it is just impossible to escape that.
Yeah, and you could argue that it was Tim's time. I mean, Jorge Prado was taken out in Majora, as we saw firsthand. And then Jeffrey had his technical problem. But then also, Jorge Prado went from being 14 points down in the championship to having a 7-point lead in China. But if you look at his statistics when it comes to starts alone, I think he's on 16 whole shots now. Then that has to be a factor in the fact that he's picked up these amount of points and has been able to match Geiger's consistency or make up for the shortfall when he hasn't had a good day.
It is also weird, so the MXGP tracks have a very typical start layout, especially man-made tracks, 180 turn, hump over the whole shot line or what have you. And rarely do we see an issue. But then by happenstance, an issue occurs and it's Tim. But that could have happened at any GP this year. But it just happens at this point. I don't know why, but there's something about this whole thing that has me a bit befuddled or what a weird coincidence. But it's not, I just weird a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be slightly gutted for Tim, to be honest, if it gets to another situation like 2021 where it comes down to the sort of the sharp end of the championship and just one sort of glitch ruins the whole season of what has been, otherwise really high-end performance. But, I mean, Prado won in Turkey, he won again in China, and, he's delivering the results really when it counts. I mean, 7 points is pretty much nothing. I mean, he could fall off in the qualifying race at his home Grand Prix next week and that red plate can go back onto the onto the Honda rather. But I think it's fantastic. It's a shame that Hurlings just wasn't a little bit closer. I mean, 48 points now is too much. I think he needs he obviously needs 47 points just to take P2 in the championship. But as we've been saying all along, since the beginning of the year, Lewis, Hurlings' goals this year were largely to finish the season. And I think he pointed out in Turkey that he hasn't done a whole complete year of every single Grand Prix since 2017, which is quite some stretch.
And ironically, 2017 is one of the years he didn't win the championship. Since 2017, he's won 2 championships, but also since 2017, he's not raced every race. That if you explain that to someone in MotoGP, they would be like, "Wait, what? What?" That does not. Those two things do not belong in the same sentence. It is heartbreaking because now with Tim's issue, because at one point Jeffrey was quite close to Prado, he was within the range of he could have struck quite easily. So now with Tim's issue, you're like the door really was open, but Sweden particularly just couldn't capitalize on it. But I will feel comfortable if Prado wins this championship because since round one, I wouldn't say, he's not been the best guy since round one because they've all had their moments. But overall, this whole season, Prado has proven himself to be the man, I feel. Like he is definitely, if he wins this, a deserving champion, cannot be discredited. No one can question it. Like outright, he has been amazing and has the credentials to be proud of this title if he gets there.
Yeah, actually, just a quick tangent, and going back to Turkey, it was cool that Jeremy Sewer finally got on, or took a checkered flag with the Kawasaki, but it's been a strange old 10 days for the Swiss. I mean, he took that victory, and then, his departure from Kawasaki was announced. Then the signature with Ducati was officially announced. And then he crashes in China. I sent him a quick text to ask if he was okay because he sort of scrambled off the track and it looked a bit dodgy. And then I think there's a photograph somewhere of him basically with a layer of skin missing from the right side of his body. But he said, yeah, all was okay because it's getting to the point now for Sewer where you kind of think, that run of consecutive GPs is as much of a noteworthy thing on the CV as any potential other results. But yeah, it's I think we have to mention him a little bit just because what's been going on. But what do you think, Lewis? I mean, is this going Honda's way or is it going to go Gasly's way?
I think Prado's because ultimately, and this is also funny. So now, as long as my math is correct, and as we know, I'm terrible with numbers, so maybe don't take this as gospel, but let's presume that I'm in the range. 7 points. If Geyser goes 1-1-1 and Prado goes 2-2-2 in Spain, it's a tie, and Prado is a clear winner of the tiebreak with a lot more wins. So, and realistically, it's only really Hurlings that is going to stop Prado from going 2-2-2, most likely. And is Hurlings really going to take a championship away from Austria? Really? I don't know. So it's kind of hard for me to see a scenario where Prado isn't a champion.
Yeah, it's a good shout on the team play, and this is where Ruben Fernandez's speed over the last few motos as well is something that Honda have clearly missed. And I was kind of frustrated actually watching some of the Chinese GP. I thought Honda had this huge setup and a big investment in motocross, and again they're just relying on one rider to bring home the chips. It's is it really that impossible to have all the money and all the budget on the technical side and not invest in a third rider, even somebody that's slightly young that could pop up with a surprise victory, put them on there and develop them. It's because if you lose your second guy like you have from round one, then there's points, just one or two races where that third guy could have taken a few points away from Prado or Hurlings and made Geiger's life easy. So yeah, that's a sound point, I think. But yeah, I like Prado's chances as well, also based on the fact that he can use home GP pressure really well. I mean, he swept the GP in Madrid. He did the same at his home track in Lugo. And talk about home GP pressure that doesn't get any bigger or any higher than actually racing 2 to 3 sort of miles away from your own home. So when it comes to Kozo, I think Tim's going to have to really like lay it all out there.
Yeah, and without the benefit of hindsight, when the qualifying race was initially cancelled, I was certain that that hurts Prado because Prado was 14 points down, and that was one opportunity to take points away removed. Like in my mind, it was so clear cut that that hurts Prado. But now, as a matter of fact, it has hurt Tim because had the qualifying race been run and Tim had won, and Prado had finished second, say, and Tim had managed to get one extra point in the buffer, it would be winner takes all in Spain. So funny how that works. The qualifying race actually has really screwed Tim because, yeah, he could have been in a winner takes all situation, but he's not now, and that's tough in my mind. Like I say, I can't see a world, although Roman is coming back to form, rode great in China. I just can't see a world where Prado gets beaten by Roman, beaten by Sewer, beaten by Fernandez, or to a lesser extent, beaten by Jeffrey, but only because I just can't imagine the KTM are going to let that happen.
The good thing is that the weekend's going to unfold in 3 stages. What's going to happen in the qualifying race on Saturday? What happens after the first moto and then go into the line for the third. It's good that it's going to go right up until the last few laps of the year. I mean, that's all you want as a neutral fan.
Yeah, because we don't. I've been meaning to look into that actually. When was the last time both championships have gone to the last round? Because that's rare. It's rare for one championship to go to the last round, let alone both.
In 2021,
I don't remember.
yeah,
this is on brand for me. 2021 was so good. I don't remember MX2 at all. Literally, I I think Renault won. I think, but I have nothing for you on MX2
I
20.
think Vial broke his foot in Arco de Trento before,
No, Vial
but
broke in 2021. Vial broke his foot in that weird, rumored. Um, he was
ah,
doing a practice start, and Mostike was rejoining the track.
yeah,
Something weird like that.
but no, I don't think that was the foot. I
Oh,
think that was something else. He broke his hand. But yeah, that was a freaky thing. But yeah, good shout. When was the last time to actually? I mean, there's one date that stands out for me immediately, and that's '08 at Faenza, which is now Andrea Dovizioso's Park 04 circuit. I'll be driving past it later, actually, on the way to Misano for MotoGP. But yeah, that was Tyler Rattray winning his world championship ahead of Tommy Searle, and then later in the day, David Philipparts won his championship ahead of Ken Ledecker and Steve Ramon. So '08 stands out, but there probably were others.
yeah. Honestly,
Anyway,
oh 08 is because Emick the 450 class has so often not gone down to the final round. Like it's almost like fairy dust to have a title fight even open at the last round, let alone competitive at the last round. So yeah, feel blessed, everyone. What a treat
yeah.
to have.
And
Um,
also immense credit to the three riders just for going at it all year. I mean, they must have been on the podium together at least a third of all the 19 Grand Prix we've had so far. And it's a phenomenal level to be at for so many races in different climates and over across the months. So, I mean, eternal praise for putting on a show.
Presuming that Prado wins this championship, gonna be weird to not have him on the line next year. Like there will be a noticeable hole where the reigning world champion should be. And
Uh,
when was the last time the reigning world champion left? But Rattray again? Is this all 2008 references?
Premier class. I mean,
I don't think
even
it
the
is.
likes of Ben Townley didn't win. I mean, he was a bit of a protagonist in MX1 before he went to the US.
And then I mean, obviously,
Yeah,
Crowley didn't win his final year. And then Hurlings is still here.
yeah.
Tim's still here. That accounts for X amount of the last 10 championships, 15 championships. That actually accounts for all of them, doesn't it? Up until 2008?
I
Tim?
think
Oh, the man.
Roxon was the last world champion that left the series the following year. That's what
Yes.
I want to say. Because Porcel won it, but then raced again another year and then disappeared. But that was before Roxon anyway. So we're thinking 2011.
Vial. He won it and then left. Didn't he?
Yeah. Okay.
But it's
Yes.
MX2, and honestly, who cares about MX2 nowadays? Ah,
Who was the last EMX 250 champion to
honestly, so the highlight of my Austrian trip so far is I bumped into Dirk Grubel, and I love Dirk Grubel. Honestly, a great guy. And I've
Yeah.
missed him ever since he left the paddock, and I haven't seen him because he's not been at the GPs I've been at, and then by happenstance, bumped into him. A lot of Jeffrey talk, a lot of MX2 talk, a lot of EMX 250 talk. Just ticked so many boxes in my personal checklist. So just wanted to be clear that I got to talk about Jeffrey's personality. Jeffrey said this, can't believe Jeffrey said this, can't believe he does this, a lot of that. So just ideal. Really perfect. Probably should have tried to do this podcast from Austria and get Dirk on, but I mean
Yeah. Can you share one scoop?
um
I'm putting you on the spot now.
I said to Dirk, can you believe that at the beginning of the year, Jeffrey was so respectful and was like, oh my God, Tim and Jorge are just better than me. Maybe they're just better riders now. And I messaged Jeffrey and said, stop bullshitting. And Dirk was like, yeah, I don't know why he was saying that because that's not Jeffrey. And I was like, thank you for clarifying that I'm not insane. Um, but no, anything else on the top three? It's kind of done.
I what did you think about Prado on the podium? I felt very, very uncomfortable watching that.
Why? Because he was
It
so
was
animated.
no, because he was about to collapse. I mean, I think Jorge Villegas, the FIM president, kind of gave him the trophy and waved in front of his face to say, "Are you there? Are the lights are on? Is there
Wait,
anybody
I must
home?"
have missed this. I must have not registered this.
No, I mean Jorge didn't do the post-race interview. I mean, he looked. I mean, the conditions looked brutal, and Paul Malin sent me a message just saying, that the heat is unreal. It was sort of worse than Indonesia, and he didn't do the post-race interview. You could see him being doused with water, and on the podium, he just looked like he was suffering. I mean, it was a case of like, give me something to drink, get me out of here. He was grimacing, smiling at the same time. At one point, I kind of saw Jeffrey looking at him, thinking, is he all right? But then I kind of think, mate, he's just won the race ahead of you. So, if there is any kind of like criticism or, if you're wondering about his fitness, then it's because he's sort of, stood up and done the job. Again, another whole shot holding him in good stead there. But yeah, it was tough to watch, I was thinking somebody get him out of there because he had this really funky fashion style as well. Somebody obviously pulled like his riding pants off and put a pair of shorts on and boots. And he looked like he was struggling.
Well, that's also a nice throwback to Prado's issues of yesteryear. But
Yeah, but I think he is. Maybe I'm way off, but I think he is really, really fit. And he's said it to me numerous times. He's been in really, really good shape this year. But who knows? I mean, maybe it was like a Hurling's type secret where he's been had a stomach complaint, or he's just been feeling under the weather, and therefore, if you race in crazy temperatures, is going to take it out of it. And as we know, and credits to MXGP for their flexibility because it was supposed to be a day later, and then suddenly they moved the whole show to Sunday, crammed everything into the morning. They were riding from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. because the whole facility had to be cleared because of this typhoon warning. I mean, it kind of ruined my Sunday. I got one weekend off in like 8 weeks, and I suddenly find myself reading a press release saying, "Yeah, MXGP is now on Sunday instead of Monday." So I was like, great. But
in
they
true
did it.
MXGP fashion, they still shoehorned in the 85 class. Because the support classes are just as important, everyone. We are going to get them in, don't worry. Like, it was so logical to sell the 85 riders. They're not racing, but oh no, Jeffrey and Little 85 Man, you are of equal importance to us. Don't worry, you are both going to get your shot at the show. So
Well, they might be growing the future Chinese hurling. So who knows? What did you think of the circuits?
honestly, I've given this a lot of thought because I knew this would come up. It's fine. Like, again, I've said this numerous times. You judge overseas races to a different scale. But to that scale, it's fine, I think. Obviously, the riders complained, or not complained, but they noted that it was quite fast, quite smooth, because no support classes apart from, God bless the 85s. And a quick program, so maybe less laps than normal. So that also, it's quite short. A few people noted that to me, so there's that. But overall, for an overseas race, and I think if you told people we're racing in China, their reaction or what they would expect would be something much worse than that, which means it's fine.
Yeah, I thought it was better than Turkey, although I don't really have too much qualification when it comes to that.
It's got more
But
cap.
yeah, I mean, if you look at the setup as well, it's impressive. I mean, everything from the areas for the fans, the way the track's laid out. I mean, they even had an LED podium. I mean, it looks really advanced and trick. And of course, for a track, I don't know how often that place is used, but for a track that doesn't have that many big international races or perhaps doesn't get frequent punishment from other bikes, naturally it's going to be a bit weird for World Championship spec. And it had a kind of like a Kegums feel where it was hard packed, but had like a sort of sandy soft layer on top. Maybe caught out a few riders with some hidden holes and bumps. I thought it looked better than Turkey. And Turkey, again, I was just looking for fans. That just seems to be the theme of the GP. But I know you like that one.
I like Turkey, and I will not stand for this slander. It will be interesting to see how this weekend impacts the future of the Chinese Grand Prix. I think, am I right in thinking Just One or the Just One parent company are the promoters, or are they just heavily involved? They are heavily involved, but I think they're the promoters.
That was the case for the first GP. I'm not sure about this one. So perhaps it wasn't promoted overly well because it wasn't glaringly obvious that it was a Just One GP.
Point being, it's definitely not lacking funding. But I think that they were expecting a lot of fans on Monday. They were obviously robbed of those ticket sales. So I wonder if this puts the future of the event, the financial stability of the event, in question a little bit, perhaps. Also interesting, and this is where finally we bring some scoop and insight to the podcast. Because of the typhoon, the crates have been delayed coming back, and people are stressing because I don't know if they're going to be back in time for the trucks to leave for Spain.
Is it not possible they could get the bike straight to Spain? Then, at least then they can work on them at the circuit.
Perhaps, but yeah, I do believe this is a stress and something that everyone's monitoring quite closely because if you were on Instagram at all over the weekend, you would have seen that Monday the area was flooded.
Yeah.
Our good friend and friend of the podcast, Rasmus Jorgensen, sent me a selfie from the plane, and he was in economy in a middle seat, and I was like, "What the hell?" And he said that because of all the cancelled flights, because of the typhoon and stuff, he just had to get on whatever flight he could. So clearly, travel chaos and not an ideal situation. So watch this space, I guess. But that's maybe the interesting fallout to come from the Chinese Grand Prix. Do you think flyaways are always going to be a topic? They're always going to be questioned. Is it eventually going to rear its head that teams are going to say in their next management meeting within front, we went all of that way for a morning of racing? And although it wasn't in anyone's control and we just had to react to the circumstances, we need these events to be paired in a double header with another event to make it so the trip and the investment is worthwhile, so that if something happens, like a cancellation or a postponement, we have another event to fall back on, so we're not just burning money.
Yes and no. I mean, also coming back to your question about the stability of the Chinese GP, I mean, I think it was only one of 4 Grand Prix in the whole calendar that has a title sponsor, Oriental Beauty, whatever that may be.
That sounds like quite a big deal, but maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what it is,
I'm
but
going to Google it while you talk.
yeah, find out what it is. So yeah, they obviously have backing, and there's nothing you can do about sort of weather warnings where they're asking people to stay at home. And the teams can say, yeah, we need these things to be back to back, but then also it does elevate the costs more if you have to stay in a part of the world where your team or riders or staff are not based. I think Infront do a decent job of it with, say, like Indonesia, by putting everybody in Lombok, or at least in that kind of geographical region where they can run back-to-back GPs. That's a way of appeasing both promotion of a world championship and a promoter that has the cash and the enthusiasm to make it happen. But what do you pair with China? Perhaps you should do these things in double headers to get the events on the calendar, get the events run, try to minimize cost, Lewis. I think that's a fair point, but I don't think the teams can walk into a meeting and say, there has to be double headers. And by all accounts and what we've seen and what we've learned, the Chinese GP would have been a pretty high quality, decent Grand Prix. The first one was in 2019, and this is the second. It was just unlucky that it got hit by, that weather.
Well, first of all, I don't know if this is correct, but allow me to read you an excerpt from Google. Dongfang Maidin, or Oriental Beauty, or Baho, that was actually a really good pronunciation, I think, among other Chinese names, is a heavily oxidized, non-roasted tip-type oolong tea.
Okay.
Originating in X place in Japan.
In China.
Taiwan.
Who would have thought?
I don't know why I said Japan. I'm to be honest, jet lag's not great.
Were you trying to read Mandarin just then?
There were parts of it. Well, is that what? Yeah, or Chinese? I don't know. There's parts of it that are in other languages. It's a whole thing. I'm not sure that a tea company is really title sponsoring the Grand Prix, so I'm not sure if that's the Oriental Beauty, but sure, we'll work off of that.
Well, it's Monster Energy's sponsor the French GP.
That's probably the best comeback you could have possibly had, because
there you go.
Yeah, I have no comment on that. I did have something to say in response to what you just said. Oh, I'm really surprised. Remember, like 2 years ago when it was like leaked that the Malaysian Motorcycle Federation had come out and said we're running GPs and and Thailand's back, and like there's just been none of that. Thailand or Malaysia would work as a double header with China, but I have no idea why that's been heavily rumored but not actually come to fruition.
Well, Thailand's supposed to be on the calendar next year, isn't it? Which
Well,
we're still
is it?
waiting for the
Because
publication of.
that's another one that we've heard time and time again. But like Brazil's coming, and then it just never does.
Yeah, but there's actually been a presentation. At least, well, I mean, maybe it was a pitch, but there is photos of a presentation of a 2025 Grand Prix of Thailand. So I
Okay.
think we'll just have to wait and see until the calendar finally comes out, which what day is it today? It's the 18th of September. MotoGP calendar is supposed to be out in 5 days. Maybe motocross is similar because they like to run these things through the FIM before they're published provisionally. So maybe it's just that time of the year where the FIM are sort of gathering all the calendars together.
I'm just going to check the PDF part of the FIM website because they normally put the calendar there before it's released by accident. Um, they have not, but they have just uploaded, as of yesterday, the FIM World Supercross regulations. If we want to brush up on those, I'd imagine the regulations are: if the event runs, do what you want.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. As a token of our appreciation, there are no regulations.
My God.
No, okay, let's move on. Fernandez Fernandez has been fast but crashy since his return, it must be said. And you know what? Someone in America said to me, why are HRC continuously backing Fernandez? It doesn't make sense to me. And all I could think is,
Outrageous.
do I call Adam right now and just...
Outrageous.
Isn't
his speed obvious? And also the way that he can start on that bike. I mean, why would you just scrape someone off because they've broken their ACL?
Honestly, and maybe this is bold, I think that since Fernandez returned from injury, he has proven himself more to me than he had pre-injury in that entire period. I don't know why, but since he's returned with such force and such immediate oomph that it's almost made me go, okay, there is something here then. Because you can
Yeah.
only do that if you've got a natural flair.
Yeah, he's not a bad rider. He's a hard worker. I don't think HRC have confirmed him again for next year yet. So I don't know what they're waiting for. Maybe it's one of those press releases that's imminently incoming. But
I don't think they haven't released it, but I think he's signed, right?
I don't know. I
Oh, I
mean, I
got
think
told.
there was a little bit of pressure. I think there was some talk around the Grand Prix of Sweden that he wanted to come back and race, but they were like, well, let's sign the deal and then, the bike's here for you. And there was some sort of loose talk about that. I mean, I apologize to HRC if I'm inaccurate with the information, but yeah, I think he's sort of done enough. Can we say that? Just in these couple of
Oh, yeah.
moto appearances to say that, he's fast on a 450.
Yeah, and who else are they going to sign? I think it's done. I really do. And actually, another deal that's done, Guadagnini did finally sign a Ducati contract last week. At long last, after 7 years of negotiations, they finally agreed terms. I have no
No,
idea why it took so long.
because he
Um,
was trying to choose the Audi that he wanted. That's what it
Honestly,
was.
I thought he blew it. It took so long for that deal to get signed that I thought he blew it. I thought he was waiting out for more money or another deal, and they moved on. So lucky, I think, that he actually managed to secure that, which does in fact leave us with Watson, Ferrato, Harrop, Bonacorsi, Gifting, and I think that's it.
But Harrop's going to Kawasaki, right?
No, I've told you who's going.
Oh,
I
I
may
get
I suspect through what I may have heard, and if I had to have an educated guess, that Paul's Jonas will be on a Kawasaki.
right. So that leaves a gap at standing. And also Ferrato's not signed. So are you still
Yes,
trying to shoehorn Ben into Honda?
to my knowledge, Ferrato isn't signed because I think he had a 1 year plus option, and to my knowledge, the option is in flux. Yes, I think that Ben Watson should go to standing, and I will die on that hill. And I think that he would podium a race next year on a standing bike.
So you don't think Harrop's going to go there instead?
Well, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, if I'm standing, I go for Harrop and Watson.
I mean, you wouldn't go
It's
for
a very
Ferrato?
Ferrato can ride a beater. Italian. They can all just talk Italian.
You're a
Um,
bit harsh on the people that get injured early on, Lewis, and trying to come back. I mean, should
no,
Maxime Renault suddenly start riding, I don't know, like a TM?
no, to Ferrato's credit, and this is nations related, he wasn't selected for the nations team, but since he's returned from injury, he's had the best result of any Italian in MXGP all year. So
There you go.
Italy wise, he's fine. But I feel like if I'm standing, I sign Harrop, I sign Watson. That's a very clean team. It's a very marketable team. It's a very nice team. Both great guys, both very easy to work with. The dynamic there would be nice. Both friends of Lewis, which is obviously what every team wants and needs in their stable, because it just guarantees some nice words on this podcast. I think a team of Harrop and Watson would be ideal. And then Ferrato can go to beta. The Italians can have dinner at 9 p.m. for 4 hours, and they can do all of the Italian things that they can not communicate and all of that stuff that the Italians love. And then Bonacorsi can go to beta as well. And then it's all
Well, while you're fantasizing on Island Lewis, I think the Guadagnini news finally being confirmed. I mean, it's been a busy week for Ducati. They have confirmed Sua and just announced, I think this morning, that Lupino is going to be riding in Spain, which we kind of heard about and we knew. But it's good that they're using that as their last sort of test Grand Prix outing before 2025. I think he's got one more race as well. It said in the press release in Arco for the Italian series, which he heads by some distance. It'll be curious to see how Lupino does, with starts and some pace, and if the bike can make it to the end of the motos. But then of course after Spain or after the Nations, I should say, Jeremy Sewer is going to be getting on it, and you can imagine he's going to have a pretty busy autumn/early winter trying to get that thing ready.
Are we surprised that Caroli's not doing the last GP?
I don't know. I didn't get. I mean, there was no sort of comment from him after the GP in the Netherlands whether he kind of enjoyed it or he thought this is too much for me or it's too much of a stretch.
It's a good
So
point. It
perhaps,
was really like it was almost like it never happened in a weird way, wasn't it? Like
yeah.
under the
I mean,
rug.
the bike let him down, and Tony always prefers sandy tracks. Maybe it's just Lupino's turn as well. I mean, it could be a contract thing, and based on the material they have, which as we know, throughout this year, Ducati haven't had that many race bikes in full prep to be able to go sort of racing and continue a full testing program.
Dare I say that I was left disappointed by the sewer announcement?
Why?
Because it's Ducati and they've got experience with all of these press launches and the ways to do things. And then we just get a mugshot of Sewer in holiday clothes and a paragraph, like not even a press release, it was a paragraph that basically said, it was basically a Wikipedia entry summarizing who Jeremy Sewer is. And I was like,
But they're not allowed to do more. I mean, you have to have a very generic photo. You can't have a quote because he's contracted by Kawasaki.
just wait. And then until after the nations or to out the nation, like don't like, yeah, just like so much expected from Ducati that I was just a bit like, come, like I wanted the world and you gave me an island.
Well, whether it's Ferrato or Harrop or Jonas, maybe they're in a positions where they want to announce their second rider. So it's a case of like, Jeremy, we're going to say that we're letting you go, and that just frees up Ducati to put out an official confirmation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because if Kawasaki announced they're letting Jeremy go, does that not mean that that opens the door for then any other announcement? Because they've kind of laid the woodwork, the groundwork.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, now the way is kind of clear publicly. I mean, in terms of, and you think, why is this a big deal? It's because there are sponsors and suppliers who pay these teams and have contractual agreements, and sometimes they're based around those riders. Or Jeremy Sewer might be wearing a particular logo or a T-shirt or whatever, promoting a brand that then is a competitor of a new team he's going to. So it all kind of ties in terms of just the professional side. That's the reason
Also,
for it. I think. I mean, those announcements are ridiculous. I mean, I've written some of them for brands sometimes as well, where you're hardly allowed to say anything. The rider isn't even allowed to appear in a photograph. But there is just this especially for independent or smaller teams, they want to announce they maybe have a bigger profile rider, because then just generates conversation and it allows shortcuts when it goes to meetings for sponsorship. So there are sort of different means and different methods around this kind of tactic.
What I want is video opens, Swiss landscape, cow walks into shot, zoom in on the cowbell, then an Audi, the door opens, you see a foot come out, screen goes black, announcement soon. Glitch on the MXGP and Ducati logo, announcement soon. Goosebumps. That's cinema, that is.
But can you do that for like the first time he's on the bike? You know, he gets
Sure.
out of the car and his Ducati kit, and then, you know, instead of the cow, he kind of walks past the cow and gets on like a new Desmo 450. I mean, that can still be done.
Okay,
You
well,
can
there we
still
go.
sell your idea.
This is what I want from motocross, stuff like that, like cinema. Like that, like we can do it, guys. It doesn't cost that much money if you're savvy with it. Also, silly season wise, I don't want to say it with 100% certainty, so I will say it with 94% certainty. I think FNH is done at the end of the year.
Okay. Don't you think it's been a team a little bit in
Yes.
spiraling the last few years anyway?
Yeah, but like when you think about Vesteri, Jacoby, Mostike year, they were really like almost
Yeah.
the team that was challenging the establishment, you know? Like they were
Oh,
really
Factory Kawasaki.
yeah, like it was really turning into something from where they started. And then I don't really know what they've done. Like they're on black bikes now. They've not really like have we even mentioned them on this podcast this year? Like, I don't know. So not a surprise, but I do believe it's going that way, which doesn't really impact the landscape of the pits too much because we had way too many MX2 teams anyway. Because Riley Racing is coming back as a Kawasaki MX2 team with, I believe, Kai Castmakers and I forget who the other rider is.
Yeah, but you don't want to be riding a Kawasaki now, do you?
Don't you?
In MX2. No, you want to be on a Japanese, an Austrian bike. You know,
Well,
if you have to
right.
be on a Japanese bike, it's got to be a blue one.
I'd rather, honestly, if I'm not on an Austrian bike, I'd rather be on a British bike at this point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
That's why maybe that's something to do with FNH's decision or also Kawasaki's. I mean, they've been through some teams. I mean, CLS, of course, Dylan Ferrandis, Thomas Covington, Tommy
so,
Searle.
so, brilliant segue. JJ Lassetti is coming back with Riley Racing, apparently.
Okay.
Which, full credit to the man. He did a lot. Similar to FNH, that doesn't mean much anymore because CLS was an absolute fucking train wreck towards the end. And then he came back, he left, came back with Boss, which I'll just leave it there. I don't need to speak. So don't count me as excited for that return and just count me as like, yeah, do whatever you want. Like just crack
you
on.
you can't fault JJ for passion. Also for getting the best out of certain riders, complicated riders. I mean, persuading Tommy Searle to sign a contract to ride just you know, not even a semi-factory Kawasaki instead of going to HRC, I think was a masterstroke. I mean, that was some serious persuasion done there. And he also knows some of the technical people to bring in. I mean, Harry Nolte in the past, Rennie Ebert. There's been people in CLS who have made sort of some magic happen. And the way he also managed to harness and control sort of Christophe Pourcel and let him operate in his own sort of satellite team or set up as part of the team. It's he's done some very interesting stuff in motocross. But let's see if he can do something in 2025.
I'll tell you who will be doing something in 2025. In fact, they're doing something right now. Hey, Yamaha YZ125 or 250 riders, this one's for you. If you've been riding models from 2002 to 2021, listen up, because Polosport has something that's going to make your heart race. They are introducing the new restyling kit, a complete transformation for your Yamaha, giving your bike a 2024 look without any complicated modifications. The kit includes everything you need: a new gas tank, a full race seat, airbox, and so on. No fuss, no hassle. Your old YZ 2-stroke will look like it just rolled off the showroom floor. So to all of the YZ 125 or 250 owners out there, it's time to transform your bike. Your Yamaha deserves it. Polosport has what you need. Thank you to Polosport. All Balls Racing, and EVS for all of their support of this podcast show. I'm just trying to bring everyone a real treat, especially those who weren't around in 2019, which is you remember the Boss Kawasaki race reports, right? Um, and I've just scrolled endlessly. I don't know what one this is, but let's see. No, that's not. They did a poem one week. I really want to find the poem. I really a weekend to forget. No, that's not.
Boss or Solitaire?
Solitaire?
Yeah,
What
their
do you mean?
press releases were pretty memorable as well, weren't they?
Um, I'm not. Boss wins because Boss makes me just is laughable, and we can all. I can't find a poem, but they did a poem which genuinely will live in infamy. So well done to them for that. Anything else MXGP wise?
Nope, no, I think we're good.
Should we start MX2 with Lucas Kuhnen, or should we start it with Yu Hao Li, who was 17th? Lucas Kuhnen?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go for you.
Oh, fuck. Didn't really he's from China. He's number 767, and he got 13th in the second race, which actually 13th is really quite amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we reignite that old discussion for points should be awarded down to 15th place,
yes,
Lewis?
yes, and I
Right,
really think
okay.
that is the answer. Because it would bring value to everyone.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think there is a need for sub awards now in MXGP or MX2. Best independent team rider, best rookie. No, no, not the poem, because there's not enough poetry in motocross. And there'll just obviously be one clear winner. I think there has to be subdivisions, let's make points mean something. And then also, give out a couple of prizes. Not because we're in it anymore, everyone gets a trophy kind of generation, but because you have to give incentives. And I think it brings a little slice of publicity for people or sponsors that are backing kids or rookies or whatever to try and break into that illustrious top 15 and at the end of the year say, hey, I got 36 points after racing 10 GPs as a 17-year-old or something.
I I can't find the poem. I'm going to stop now.
They
Uh,
forget the poem.
I think they've
Just
deleted it, which is amazing that they had the awareness to realize they were being laughed at because I just did the entire 2019 season.
well,
Um,
you've completely killed shot with their attempts to do special liveries for things after the moon landing episode. So I don't want you to wreck poetry now because poetry is actually pretty cool.
yeah, for someone who's adamant that the sport needs to be better, I really am good at just shitting on any attempt at being
Yeah, being different or individual.
different. Uh, but before we get into the meat of MX2, so the Australian Federation sent some riders over to wildcard in China as promotion for next year's Australian Grand Prix, and I was quite excited by this because Brody Connolly, by all accounts, is an incredible Australian talent and will be in either MXGP or America soon because he's that good. And then Kirk Gibbs, Todd Waters, a name we know from the past, riders who you would presume, because of the high level in Australia, are going to come in and really make an impact. And ultimately, I was left disappointed, which I think is a stark reminder of the fact that MXGP and MX2 are now at such a level that even in China, where the field is at its weakest, you can't just turn up and expect to be super competitive. Like the level is far superior to that. It is a world championship, which as as bland as that is to say, I think that really carries all of the connotations you need.
I agree with you, but can we just at least make an allowance for the makeshift nature of the Grand Prix and the way that they raced on a completely flat track in double quick time and in crazy heat conditions?
What you're saying that in respect to like maybe they were really thrown in at the deep end.
Yeah, and I think if the form book kind of suddenly went a bit weird, then that might be a reason.
Okay,
So
but
Young Hao Lee taking 13th, can I think be explained a little bit by the fact that the kid might have been doing motos in 40-degree temperatures for weeks or something, and might just have been able to last a little bit longer than a jet lagged European. I'm just sort of throwing factors out there.
This is the most out of pocket statement I've ever made, and I have no basis for this, so it's not like I'm hinting at anything.
Goodness.
Just struck me. Do you really think we're checking the ages of these people for MX2? Like, obviously, we are with Australian and like legit riders, but when the Chinese rock up, do you think we're really like on this? Or I would bet that at some point in the last 10 years, someone has slipped through the cracks. Sure, they have to have done, surely.
Well, maybe in China they're still writing their ages in the passports with a pen. That used to be the thing, didn't it? Maybe you can just quickly change like a digit, add a couple more, or take a few years off.
What made me think it, as you said, this kid in relation to Zhu Sang-su or whatever his name was, and then I was like, wait, well, maybe he's not a kid. Maybe he's like 40 and just because I remember there was a thing, 2008 again. Random how this has happened. I remember there was a thing where a fan at Lommel just put on gear and a helmet and managed to get onto the start and prep a gate because he had gear and a helmet, so he just
What?
walked through. And then
I
he
don't
was
remember that.
he's prepping a gate before the MX2 moto.
God, I don't remember that at all.
I remember the photo because Steven Sword in Molson Kawasaki colours, Fox gear, was stood next to him looking at him, and the photo was in magazines and stuff.
Are
Probably
you sure about that?
maybe the photo was attached to an article you wrote in one of the magazines. Probably.
You sure it wasn't just Ken de Dyker and people were mistaking him for a large Belgian fan?
Maybe I was 12 at the time, so maybe I'm not 100% accurate, but it stuck out in my mind.
Okay.
What also sticks out in my mind is how amazing All Balls Racing are. The All Balls Racing Group is a combination of the finest aftermarket power sports brands from across the US and Europe, combining OEM level engineering and design capabilities with a world-class supply chain, makes them the largest global supplier of critical aftermarket hard parts for the power sports industry. You can trust the All Balls Racing Group to provide the exact fitment and best quality in the industry at a price that fits your budget. All Balls Racing have everything to keep you running. In a similar essence to MXGP, my overarching theme when thinking about MX2 is the fact that the mismanagement of Lucas Coonen's home Grand Prix has really cost him a shot at this championship. Because credit to him, he's been chipping away. He's taking it to the final round. What is the gap now? It's 89, 99, 09, 36. And I want to say...
That's still a lot.
No, that is a lot. But my point being, in Belgium, he lost 20 points.
Why was that mismanagement? That was just poor performance by him, though, right?
Fuck. Well, now
but also, no, but also he didn't ride very well in Switzerland, and apparently that was a goggle issue or something.
So from what I know, the home Grand Prix was a stressful experience for him.
Yeah, but that's also from the people around him or whatever else. It's but I don't think we can imply that the team or the brand or something.
I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking. I'm taking myself down this river now where I kind of need to say it.
I think mismanagement is a pretty serious thing.
From the family.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think at a home Grand Prix, I don't think the family,
yes,
namely the dad, made it so that it was a relaxed environment where Lucas was able to accept the pressure of the home Grand Prix and flourish. I think that the dad and the drama that he brought at Lommel played a part in Lucas kind of melting.
There is lots of alleged stories that it wasn't an easy home Grand Prix round for him. But we're getting to that phase of the championship now where like the glorious hindsight kicks in and you kind of start thinking, well, if he hadn't dropped the bike there or if he hadn't had that problem here, then, he would be closer in the points and whatever else. But, the fact is that Kai de Wolf has sort of, for the most part, been there plugging away, taking points as well. And I would venture that, Kai in the last few Grand Prix and weeks has just been riding with a safety cap on, like he's thinking, I cannot be too stupid here because there's a lot to lose by just an erroneous kind of moment of judgment. So I think that's something to do with it as well. You've got to give Kai credit as much as Lucas is flying and probably throwing caution to the wind. That attitude perhaps early in the season cost him a little bit more.
Fair. And congratulations to Nastan because they are now world champion with someone.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
actually,
1-2.
also credit to Nastan. After Turkey, I believe, or maybe before Turkey, I think after Turkey, they had already clinched the Manufacturers' Championship, which I guess you'd have to look, but I would presume that KTM have won that. As you know, Yamaha won it in 2021. But for Husqvarna to clinch that with 2 rounds to spare is really a testament to their dominance. And Nastan Husqvarna is really the team to be on at the moment. I think it's hot commodity in the paddock. Everyone looks at it and is like, I need to be there to be at my best. And that's because of all of the work that Rasmus has done. Rasmus has really created a super team and an environment which is conclusive to being your best. And Rasmus has experience as a rider, he has experience as a trainer. Like he knows how to position everything so that it's harmonious for the rider, and that's you're seeing that. So full credit to Rasmus.
Yeah,
Full credit to Rasmus.
again, is it's just real diligence towards high standards, and you can see that just when you walk into the team. If you're kind of aiming for a higher level all the time, then eventually it's going to come. And they've been developing and working with De Wolf for what, 3.5 years now, ever since he was sort of popping up in Europeans, and they moved him perhaps prematurely into MX2. And now, the Netherlands are about to get another world championship, and Koenen, who knows still what's going to happen with the Austrian structure, but the latest rumors are that he's going to be on an orange bike and in the 450s. I mean, going back to what you said earlier in the podcast, Lewis, is Prado going to leave a big hole in the gate? Yes, in some way, but then if you're a Spanish fan, you hopefully will still have Fernandez there doing his erratic thing. You're going to have hopefully two fully fit, promising Yamaha riders in Renault and Jago Gertz. And then, if you put Koenen in there as well, who could have one of those Geiger Febvre rookie seasons, then, things don't look too bad for MXGP. And you're going to still have Herlings, you're going to still have Geiger. So it's, I think there's some decent potential. The only thing I will say is for Nesta and Husqvarna, it's looking a little bit worrying for the guy who's rumored to be on their team next year, Liam Everts, because that was a pretty serious injury. And, I hope he had broke his C5 after sort of landing. We saw the genesis of the crash, which was contact with Lucas Koenen, but we didn't see sort of the impact. But he cracked that cervical bone and then needed an operation right after the race. And he's still in China. I think he's going to be there a week until he can fly back to Belgium. But that kind of injury, you just hope there's going to be sort of no nerve damage or secondary sort of repercussions. But that's going to be a good. You imagine that's going to put him out for a batch of the testing and maybe perhaps until the new year before he's fully fit and ready to ride.
Yeah, ridiculously. I don't know how long he was actually in the track for, but it felt like an eternity. And of course, at that point, minds start to race and you really start to panic. So it seems he will make a full recovery, which is brilliant, but still like very serious situation, very scary. Of course, we all know the flyaways is where you don't want this to happen. I think that luckily the track is near Shanghai, so it's near a major city. Better that than being in Sumbawa in Indonesia.
Yeah.
But still, obviously, you'd rather be in Eindhoven Hospital or Milan Hospital, but yeah.
Well, KTM were thanking a lady called Samantha Liu, who is she's quite high up at CF Moto, of course based in China, a big Chinese brand, and apparently she was there helping, with translation and ensuring that Liam gets the best care and the best options. So the fact that she was sort of mentioned in the press release, for example, I think is an indication of how everyone sort of rallied together to ensure that Liam was in a good place.
That's a good point. So part of the reason I'm in Austria is to see that the motocross bikes are built in Austria, because the rumors are that everything's now built in China. And across a 7-hour tour, I did in fact see that the bikes are built in Austria. Probably could have seen that in 10 minutes, but I saw it. I saw it. And the reason I'm clarifying that is because I know the answer to this would be the fear of bad press. or the way that the situation can spiral. But should KTM not make a bigger deal out of the CF Moto link with the Chinese Grand Prix and how all of that ties together, or no? Or difficult? I know it's difficult.
I think CF Moto are not really in a position at the moment to have like off-road bikes. I mean, they're a big ATV seller, but because they don't have that off-road model, maybe there's no clear link. I mean, I don't know also if at the Shanghai circuit they had a massive promo stand, for example. We weren't there, so we don't know. But I
I just mean like,
mean,
KTM doing a social post saying, um, I think they call it a strategic partner. So
yeah,
home Grand Prix for our strategic partner CF Moto, and then some sort of fanfare around. I don't know, and I know it's difficult because you do that, and then people are going to take that inch and run a mile and come up with all sort of crazy scenarios. But you saying that did just suddenly spark this in my mind that actually this was a big event for KTM, which you wouldn't think.
uh, yeah, but it's just a branding thing. I mean, if CF Moto don't have a dirt bike, and why would they have to have a huge promo at an event where they don't have a model and they're in their home market where they're the biggest anyway? It doesn't make much sense. I mean, if CF Moto had a team, then of course I think you would see much more fanfare. And because you have that brand separation, then I don't think KTM are going to be saying, "Hey, look at this, sort of partnership Chinese brand that we have." From what I understand as well, there's a big emphasis on electric vehicles in Shanghai. I think in the center, you're not allowed to ride any kind of motorbike that isn't electric. There's some sort of rule like that. So there's all sorts of implications. Perhaps it would have been a great race for Stark to do some promotion.
Yeah, but again, this comes back to the Ducati thing. Let's do a bit more, everyone. Let's think about this. I really want us all to rising tide raises all ships, and I really want us all to, let's pull up our bootstraps and get to work. And after that very serious discussion, let me transition. Toy Story 1,
Oh, we're
when
back on this. Oh, I
Woody.
thought we buried Toy Story. And why do you
Well,
have to reference everything in life to Toy Story? There are other Pixar films.
because this is also, so you kept mentioning this Coco film.
Yes.
And I'd never seen it, but because you kept referencing, I watched it on a flight, and it touched me. I was honestly, I may be scarred, but the emotional scars that film left on me. So thanks for that. Thanks a
Did you
lot.
enjoy it? Did you enjoy it though? I mean, it's a good message, right?
Yeah,
The
but
afterlife.
honestly, it took me on a journey. I mean, I made Max Anstey watch it because he's also a big Pixar guy. So I immediately messaged him and said, "Watch this film. You might cry."
Oh, God.
No, so thanks for that.
There you go.
Really had me questioning a lot about myself and my morals and will I be remembered and all of this. So thanks for that. Cheers.
All right, well, after that sort of little heartwarming claim, tell me what you wanted to say about Toy Story 1.
Toy Story 1. You know when Woody gets all jealous of Buzz and everyone thinks he's become like he's trying to destroy Buzz and Buzz
Yes.
disappears and they all. So this is Lagenfeld. Lagenfelder is Woody, we know from previous, but now in this essence as well, because little Lagenfelder is turning out to be a little bit dirty and getting a little bit of a reputation in the paddock as being a little bit dirty. And we also referencing, the Turkey qualification race. Honestly, I think it's time for me. I think I'm cutting ties with the
No, no,
Lagenfelder.
no, 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 no. I think now is the time to put Lagerfelder on the top shelf because I think he's just polishing all the little aspects of his riding, and next year he's going to be the man.
But I
You
said
can
that this
see it.
time last year.
No, but he wasn't ready this time last year. Now he's like getting like a little bit feisty. He's going longer through the motos. He's coming back and learning how to sort of recover from injury and confidence or wherever it is. I think he's just sort of he's the wolf like 12 months ago. I think he's just like priming up to the point. So I think you need to keep with him.
I also feel guilty because you may not remember this, but the podcast before Turkey, which was Switzerland, whatever it was, I did a little passionate speech about how I wanted to see more aggression and more from Lagenfelder. And then he comes out in the next race and just tries to kill the wolf. So I realize that I may not be blameless in this incident, but Yeah, like there's a lot. Honestly, I'm getting a lot of texts like, yeah, Lagenfelder's super dirty. Like people saying to me, I don't know how you haven't seen it before now. He's got a reputation. And I'm like, really? But does this not remind you of Prado? Because there's also people that have this opinion of Prado. And I'm also a bit like, really? But
Is it? It's also the fact that he's just having run-ins with people who have a lot on the line. I mean, I know he's sort of Simon's top three in the world, so it's not like he's slow and getting in the way. He's not like a Fries or something. But maybe it's just because the people he is bumping into are maybe going for a championship.
yeah, I guess obviously that puts more of a microscope. But yeah, like, I don't know. I don't know. Weird. And once again, I said that Lagenfelder would win 10 GPs this year. He hasn't won one. Absolutely shocking. As just yeah, I honestly don't know how this has gone so wrong. Um, and it's not a good look for me, and I accept that, and I realize that. And you know what? If I share a track with Lagenfelder, I would probably now, in light of recent events, be sure to gear up with EVS to make sure that I'm protected in case I get T-boned out of nowhere. Experience the pinnacle of knee protection and
Intricate injury.
Experience the pinnacle of knee protection and injury prevention with the new Weber Clips knee brace. For over 39 years, EVS has relentlessly honed their engineering expertise, consistently delivering award-winning knee protection. This legacy of excellence is embedded in every facet of the new Weber Clips, which represents a culmination of their tireless dedication to innovation and rider safety. Thank you to EVS, thank you to All Balls Racing, and thank you to Polosport for all of their support. Anything else? Anything you want to clean up, anything you want to tackle, as always, we'll just nip and tuck MX2 within 5 minutes or so. So anything else?
It's going to be a good last Grand Prix. And I've been hearing your appearances on Pulp MX and, all the chatter about the Motocross of Nations. Right now, when we're speaking, what is Team USA?
Sexton, Hymus, Passenger.
Still, after those injuries? Right. Okay. Can you please, when you're doing your various podcasts and you're about to go to the last round of SMX, do not hype Plessinger too much. I mean, Team USA in One was not good. It was not good at all. And I don't think, Plessinger can go into Matterley Basin with any kind of expectations on a podium.
Okay. Okay.
Noted.
I'll do with that.
Okay. No, just keep realistic, Lewis, because you got very excited last year talking about Christian Craig even making the podium.
I did get excited. I did, again, similar to the Lagenfelder thing. I got excited. I held my hands up. Not a good look.
Just when you're there in that moment, surrounded by Americans, and people's like putting you under pressure and saying, "What do you think's going to happen?" I want you to just take a beat, think of Madley Basin, think of the mud, think of the GP riders who have ridden around it for 10 years, and then make the estimations accordingly. Okay?
Okay, I can do that.
Right. So don't be saying that Hymus is going to come here with a dodgy knee and then go, and win his class.
Sexton can win his class.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
great. That's great. I don't really know even what to do with that. Also, speaking of the nations, I can now officially announce that on Friday and Saturday evening in the paddock at, I believe, 6 p.m., but the timetable is still being figured out, I, Lewis Phillips, and Steve Mathis will be doing a live podcast on the stage, and we will have special guests. In fact, I texted Jeremy yesterday and said, "Did I tell you I've got a stage in the paddock to do live interviews?" And he sent back 10 laughing faces and then fuck off. And I said, "No, seriously." And then he said, "Am I doing it?" And I said, "Probably." And he said, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah, I guess we're doing this." So who knows what could happen? Who knows?
Jeremy, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you get an appearance fee.
Well, you would be on this podcast, but you're not going to be on this podcast, correct?
No. Okay. I'm missing my first Motocross of Nations since 2001, purely because my book deadline is on Monday after Matterley, and I just I don't have enough time, and I also need to work for the Japanese MotoGP, so it's all come too much, unfortunately.
Well, in a weird way, I feel like Matterley is the one to miss. Like Matterley.
Well, after last time,
Yeah, it doesn't excite me as much as any other MXON. Maybe just because it's close to home for me, so it doesn't have the international flair. But yeah,
Yeah.
like,
It's a good track. If the weather does an NA like last year and it's freakily good, then it should be a superb event. I hope the British fans sort of get behind it, even though they have been sort of spoilt with races at Matterley over the years and maybe want something different. Yeah, I'm fingers crossed. I'll be having the iPad open and trying to see what's going on for sure. And the podcast sounds fantastic, Lois. I hope it goes really well. And it's something that's long, long, long overdue. I know Fox tried to do a bit of a live
didn't they? Yeah.
broadcast, yeah, a few years ago. I'm not sure if it was the Nations, it might have just been from the British GP. But I thought it was a great concept and something that should be replicated more, because if you see the popularity of things like Twitch and whatever else, then there's an audience for that.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned would you be that I potentially, with Jeremy live in the paddock, would say something that wouldn't be ideal for either of us?
No, but that's good. That's why people go and listen to it.
We can just say to Jeremy, "Hey, Jeremy, how was your year on Kawasaki?" And then just watch bombs everywhere.
Well, I just hope that the weather is okay, so you're not going to be talking to six people who are crowded under umbrellas. And secondly, I can imagine how nervous you are going to be. So just breathe
I
and
think I'll be okay.
enjoy it.
I still haven't gotten over the press conference thing, but I think I'll. I think if I'm, I think I have considered this. I think I'll. I think it'll be. I think it'll be okay.
Oh, I think with Steve there as well, you'll be all right.
I think yeah. I think I'll. I think it'll be okay. I think it'll be okay.
Well, good luck. Well, we got another podcast before that anyway, because we need to wrap the championship in Spain.
Yeah, and also we need to figure out because you're. I feel like you're not going to be very available, but we do need to do a nations preview.
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll do it. Don't worry.
But because I think if anything, we should probably scrap the Spain podcast and do a nations preview if it comes to a one or the other.
No, I mean we have to wrap MXGP. So
Okay.
Spain needs a podcast.
Okay. So everything's fine, everyone. Don't worry. Right, are we good? Nothing else
We're
to get?
good.
Okay, thank you
No,
everyone for listening to this episode of the MXGP Podcast Show. Thank you to EVS, thank you to Polosport, thank you to All Balls Racing. We will be back in 2 weeks' time to discuss the likely world champions Jorge Prado and Kyder Wolf, or will there be a surprise? Stay tuned in 10 days' time to find out. We will see you then.